Palm Bay, Brevard County, get ready for the 2024 candidate interviews. For the last 4 years, Palm Bay Live has been interviewing candidates for different offices. Palm Bay Live will continue this tradition of giving you, the resident, the opportunity to pose questions to the candidates starting this July. Our first set of interviews will start on July 11th. You can send your questions in advance to palmbaylive@gmail.com or watch the interviews online and pose your questions in real time. For a full schedule of the upcoming interviews, please log on to our social media pages, facebook.com/PalmBayLive or youtube.com/PalmBayLive. You can also watch at www.palmbaylive.com. See you there. Good evening, Palm Bay. Good evening, Palm Bay. Welcome to another week of interviews. And this tonight is going to be a busy night. We have two set of interviews that's coming your way, and the last one is going to be very interesting. I will be moderating a discussion with Amber Yance and Anthony Yance, and they're both going to be, they're vying for different seats. Uh, and so, therefore, that's going to be an interesting one. Then that starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But tonight at 7 o'clock, I have somebody very special in the house with me, and she goes by the name of Sandy Kennedy. Good evening, Miss Kennedy. How are you?
Hi, good evening, Kevin, and hello, everybody.
Welcome to the platform. And we've been discussing your interview for the last several days, and I hope you're ready to go rock and roll. And individuals watching this presentation tonight, please do me a favor. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. If you're on Facebook, please share it amongst your friends. Please share it amongst your friends, share it to your family members, share it everywhere and anywhere you can to help get the message out that Sandy is in the house and she's going to be answering my questions tonight relative to her seat. And she's running for the U.S. Representative, District 8, U.S. House of Representative, District 8. So, Ms. Sandy, again, welcome. I'm
Thank
going
you.
to ask you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them who you're about and what you're about. I do have a little bio about you, right? I know that you have a Juris Doctorate. I know that you're a registered Democrat, and I know you've been a resident of Florida for over 40 plus years. What else can you tell them?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Kennedy, and I'm a Florida attorney with 30 years experience. I'm board certified in construction law. I also have a degree in political science, a bachelor's degree. I'm a lifelong Democrat and a native Floridian. In fact, I'm so native that my family actually settled Florida back in the mid 1800s in the Panama City area, and a number of my family helped build the VAB building. That was a long time ago, though. um, and so my husband, James Stoker, works at Boeing. He's a finance manager there on the Commercial Crew project. I have a 20-year-old son. I do like cats, but I do have a child. Um, and so my interest in running for office, running for Congress started when I was in college, getting a degree in political science. It planted the idea. And so just at a certain point, well, lately with all of these issues, it just became very important to run for office at a time when our freedoms are being attacked. Um, Women's rights are being attacked, people's personal freedoms. It's just a very important time right now.
All right. Thank you for your introduction to the audience. And again, audience, I need your support. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the share button. Share this amongst your colleagues, your friends, your family members, whoever can vote. They need to know about Sandy Kennedy's candidacy for the U.S. House of Representatives. She wants to represent District 8. And supporters, I'm going to give you an opportunity later on in the program to pose your questions in real time to Sandy, and get your questions answered and on your views and what we should be doing in the federal government. So let's get the ball rolling. I have reviewed your platform in depth, Ms. Kennedy, and I have a series of questions for you. And I'm going to begin the question by asking you this. You're running against Daniel McDowell in the Democratic primary. And how do you differentiate yourself from him? And what unique perspectives or policies do you have that you would bring to the table that he doesn't?
Okay. Well, first of all, the way I distinguish myself is that I have the proper legal background as far as legal experience and a legal education that is particularly appropriate for being in higher office. This is what people typically expect for higher office, for the House, for Congress, for the Senate, and the presidency. So I have that. Um, and his qualifications are very different than mine. He does not seem to have a bachelor's degree. I know he says he just got a master's degree last year. I understand that. Um, and he has been in local office for about a year or two, which is not a full time job. I've been full time 30 years practicing law, and law school, as well as practicing law, you are constantly dealing with constitutional issues, reading about them. You have continuing legal education that you have to keep up with. And there's a whole body of constitutional law. It's not just reading the Constitution, knowing a few words that are in it. It just reams and reams of decisions and buzzwords, legal words. They're called magic words that you know describe constitutional rights. There's a whole body of it. It doesn't mean you just look at the Constitution and then decide what you think it means. There's a whole body of law on it. There's a whole body of environmental law that already exists, administrative law. There's a lot of things that a lawyer already knows about and would know more about how to tinker with it, what's it going to take to make that change in the law viable, make it pass constitutional muster. And I have all of that. That also is very important when you're running in a district that's very mixed. So in our district, Democrats and independents together outnumber Republicans, but Republicans do outnumber Democrats specifically. And so
That-
bringing,
Not to cut you off, that was
okay.
my next question actually. So let's right on the your answer right now. So how were you going to be able to project yourself in a overwhelmingly red district? So how would you make that appeal to those to the audience that you are the best candidate for this job? Go ahead.
Well, part of it is my qualifications that I just talked about. So things like immigration. Everybody needs immigration reform right now, but Republicans and Democrats have two completely different ways of doing it. And I don't even think my Democratic opponent has a platform on immigration. At least it's not on his website and not something developed that he talks about. Um, but so Republicans would want to just pay the money to put up a wall. We don't even have to do that. I would say you really should prefer the Democrat, prefer me, vote for me, because my way of dealing with this would be to move the processing out of the country so that you can apply from South America, from Central America in your own country for asylum and for regular immigration processing. That just immediately relieves the border and it saves a lot of money. So that's one thing. I mean, I don't want to give you my whole immigration spiel here. That's one thing that really distinguishes me from the Republicans. And I think this is a much better way to go. And another example would be paying down the debt. Very important because not only Republicans have an interest in paying down the debt, everybody does. It's going to help our economy. But the way we get there is very differently. Right now, since the 80s, since Ronald Reagan, taxes on the top 1% of taxpayers, which is not probably not anybody in our district or very, very, very few people. most people are way in not in that category at all. Those people's taxes have been dropped so much over the last 40 years that they need to be raised back to the point that we can pay down the debt, and still be able to take care of our programs, our vital programs. So that would be just two examples right there where thinking and being analytical and having new ideas and saying, look, we don't have to be stuck with this old way of doing it. Let's do something different and get the job done without fighting about the budget all the time and without paying the money to put up a wall. So that would be a good start of my pitch to actually winning this election. You there, Kevin?
I'm sorry, I had a little technical glitch. All right,
Sorry.
we all right, I'm back with you. All right, so we get through that. Now let me ask you this. The Supreme Court recently halted efforts by Florida to regulate how social media platforms manage content. Additionally, there have been legislative efforts to regulate campus protests and limit demonstrations. How do you view these legislative actions, and what measures would you propose to ensure that the rights to protest and free speech are upheld both online and offline?
Well, I think, this is another area where the right to free speech is a very well developed area of law. It's not really up to us to be tinkering with so much. But no, I do not appreciate the local Florida state efforts to prohibit teenagers from having access to social media. I'm sure it was well intentioned, but Constitution. It's very important to know what you should be tinkering with and what you cannot. And that's So I would be. I'm very opposed to things like that, and I'm very much in favor of protecting First Amendment right to speech and the right to associate, even for teenagers.
Okay. Let's deal with something more pressing. In recent news today, there's something that happened in the news cycle that I'm pretty sure you're aware of. The war that's happening, that's brewing in Israel right now. Uh, so the U.S. and Western governments are urging their citizens to leave Lebanon and other countries around Israel after Israel retaliated against Hezbollah's recent attacks, most recently in a soccer field full of children. Um, this adds a new layer to the war against Hamas, with some worry that this could turn into a much larger regional conflict. What are your thoughts on this conflict in general? And if you were currently in Congress, what would you do to help navigate through these perilous times?
Well, it is a very complicated situation. Hezbollah has been bombing and attacking Israel even before just recently. So, I mean, this has been going on a while. It's not brand new. Um, and this whole situation of um, Arab nation attacks against Israel is also nothing new. This has been going on for a very long time. And we do need to, the United States needs to act in a leadership role to try to negotiate a ceasefire with between Hamas and Israel, a permanent one, and negotiate an end to the war. And as well, I believe relieving that tension is going to help with Hezbollah. I mean, right now, I believe they feel empowered by the disputes in the United States, the fracturing of the Democratic Party on, it may not be a complete fracture, but we definitely have some splits where people are preferring Hamas, people are preferring Israel. I don't think that's the wisest way to go. We need to just try to negotiate an end to it. And it's not going to be simple. Hamas wanted thousands of people released from jail. It's basically just empty the jails and let the terrorists and I don't know who else. I'm not going to say every single one of them is a terrorist, but a lot of them have engaged in fighting and bomb throwing or whatever they've done. That's not reasonable. So Hamas has been very unreasonable, and but nevertheless, we have to try to put an end to this war. And really, the biggest thing is for the United States to be a leader in helping get this done.
Got you, got you, got you. So there was a recent assassination attempt on our former president Donald Trump that shook the nation. Can you share your thoughts on the attempt, and how do you think it reflects on the current state of the political affairs in the United States?
Um, I don't know that it was a political activity. I don't think we know that yet. So I'm not sure that it reflects on the current political status. I mean, we have had assassination attempts in the past, and there are profiles that exist of these people who do this type of crime, and I don't believe they wait for a political climate to do it. It is the thing that strikes me the most, and everyone else, I'm sure, is how did this happen? Because we all hold the Secret Service in very high regard, and we just kind of think that they know exactly what they're doing, and it's very surprising what we're hearing. And I really think that's the focus. The most important focus in Congress needs to be right now on figuring out what happened, how did it go wrong, why were there communication problems, and what can we do to fix it permanently. I think that's the most important thing.
Okay, great, thank you. Healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare. Uh, the Affordable Act has been a point of contention for several years, with some Republicans advocating for its repeal or significant modifications. What are your views on the Affordable Care Act, Medicare as well, and Medicaid?
Okay, well, that's a lot there. So, I mean, I believe we need to protect the Affordable Care Act. This is incredibly important. Um, you know, do you want to be barred from access to health care when you have a pre-existing condition? That is an Affordable Care Act issue right there. It's incredibly important. Let's say that you've been employed for 30 years, and every few years your company changes the company of health insurance, the insurance company that it's using for its plan. And then all of a sudden you change jobs, you get a new job. And then let's say you quit that job or lose that job. And now you've got a pre existing condition and you're unemployed and don't have health insurance. And then when you go back to get a new job, then you have a pre-existing condition that may bar you from getting coverage for a life-threatening permanent condition. I think that's very wrong, especially when you consider that most people do stay employed their whole lives. And it takes government, the federal government, to step in and make sure that not employers, I'm sorry, that insurers are not trying to shirk expenses by saying, oh, well, now you have a pre-existing condition and we're going to cut you off and we don't care if you've worked 30 or 40 years in the past. So I think things like this are very important. Um, so as far as, so I'm fully in agreement with protecting the Affordable Care Act. I do not support the efforts to get rid of it. I think they were political or just, um, personality driven. I don't think that's right. I think it's a good law. Um, and so on Medicare, we need to protect people's costs. We need to keep the costs down by protecting Medicare's right to negotiate prices, and not just on lower insulin and lower inhaler prices. It needs to be across the board. What sense does it make for a competitive market to say, we think the United States government should not have the right to negotiate prices? We just want to bilk the government for everything we can get. That is crazy. And we just really need to protect against that.
Okay,
I have a lot more too on that.
I understand. So how would you protect against privacy? You advocate for privacy in personal healthcare decisions. How will you work to ensure that healthcare privacy is protected in Florida?
Well, in Florida, it's going to be in the United States. And
Right.
so let me give you two examples of privacy. Well, I can give you three examples. One, within the past year, teens in Florida, female teens, have been required to disclose when they have their periods. I think that's crazy. And there needs to be a law against it because obviously you can't count on certain politicians to just know better than to do something like that. That's just absolutely wrong. And we actually went through that right here in Florida. So that's one thing. No teenager, no woman should have to disclose when she has her period, so that the government can step in and do something about it and say, well, you must be pregnant, or well, now you can't engage in sports. Something we can't allow this. So another thing that I really am opposed to is HIPAA laws right now allow uh, providers or hospitals to just give a person their medical privacy policy, and you have to sign off on it, and that's not enough. That's not good enough. They should be bound to absolutely protect your privacy, because you don't you're forced to go to somewhere to get medical care, and you don't have the ability to just run around from doctor to doctor to doctor to say, well, what is your privacy policy? And are you going to protect my private information from people who want to sell the information, from geneticists who want to find out your genes and then use that for whatever they want to use it? So we need to strengthen our privacy laws so that it's not a matter of signing a policy. It should be a matter of a 100% you are going to protect every person's medical privacy, no matter what. You are not going to force them to sign a piece of paper before they can get treatment, that they have to sign off on allowing their partners, their business partners, and their vendors to receive that information. So that's two ways right there. And then there's a third thing that's been talked about lately, which is women, um, if they need a termination of pregnancy, or if they go out of state to get a termination of pregnancy, there's been talk about having a database to record all that information. That's right in Project 2025. And they're talking about it, doing it. It's been on the news as well. And another thing of people, governors or attorneys general in one state saying, well, if you go to a different state, we're going to contact them and ask what happened to you there so that we can prosecute you when you come home. These things are wrong. So that's three things right there that I would be attacking in Congress.
Okay, you mentioned Project 2025. What's your take on it? Do you believe this is something that is heavily backed by the former president Donald Trump, or do you think it's just a product of the Heritage Foundation that's so cited by the news outlets?
I know that a lot of things that Trump have said, and policies that he has already pushed in his first term, and things that he's talked about, is this is so clear. This is for him. And I'm sure that, so the way they did it, the way the Heritage Foundation did it, is it's 900 pages. A lot of it is just separate sections where you have an expert or somebody talking about this discrete issue. Some of it just sounds like just more mundane stuff, but the crazy stuff is all up front, and a lot of it Trump has talked about. And Ron DeSantis, no one talks about this because I think Trump is catching all the flack for it right now. Ron DeSantis has already been following it, and he's bragged about it. It's all over. If you research it on the internet, you will find it everywhere, that what we've been facing here in Florida is, he was proud to say that he followed Project 2025. And it's been such a cluster for Trump that the Heritage Foundation just terminated its leader, whoever it was that put this together. He's now, I think he's lost his job, or he's no longer in charge of Project 2025. And I've even noticed that it's very hard to even find a copy of it on the internet right now. That's been for the last week or so. Um, so, I mean, this is real, and Trump is just hiding from it. But it's very real, and it's not only Trump, it's it's congressional candidates as well that you need to be thinking whether they're in support of it. And some of the draconian changes in law that they're talking about very much shows that they do favor it. So it's very important.
Okay, audience, it's your turn. You can start asking questions now in the chat. You can also call into the studio by calling this number 321-999-4559. There's two ways to interact with the Miss Kennedy. You can call in with your questions, or you can drop a line in the chat to ask her questions. Um, let's talk about housing and economic issues, Ms. Kennedy. In particular, I want to know if you believe that we're nearing a recession. A lot of folks are pointing to this fact, and affordable housing is also a pressing issue both the nationally and in the local level, especially in Brevard County. The rising cost of living is really impacting a lot of families. Housing shortages have placed a significant burden on many residents. What national policies would you advocate for to address this affordable housing crisis? And how would you ensure that these policies benefit communities like Brevard County?
Okay, so there's really a lot here that we need to address. Um, some of it is very specific to housing. For example, one of the problems we're having that is more so in Florida than in a lot of other areas, but it's just starting, and it's going to get worse in other areas. And that is the phenomenon of corporations buying up thousands of residential homes and renting them out, raising the rents dramatically. And then every year there's a new raise. And basically, they're trying to squeeze this market for themselves. It's you could say that back when we had the economic crisis, what was happening was the securitization of mortgages. And of course, yes, it did cause an economic crisis, a severe recession. And what is happening now is that they've moved on to a new opportunity, and forget about the mortgages. They're after the houses. And that's not sustainable as a practice, because we can't have people being priced right out of houses. So this is very important that we work on tax policy, and other just flat out bars, whatever we can do to address this situation. We may also want legislative limits on the number of commercial rent homes per square mile and per capita. Just a thought. Um, and, because it costs less to prevent people from ending up on the street than it does to get them back into housing after they have ended up homeless. So for people who are like, oh, we don't want to spend all this money, sorry, you need to not be penny wise and pound foolish. Very old phrase, an English phrase, I would guess, because we don't have the pound here. But the fact is you don't want to be thinking about your pennies and then not thinking about how much it's going to cost down the future to rectify this problem. And we're already in that situation now. So those are very specific things. Another thing that we need to think about is that if you look at the statistics and the data over the years since, say, the 80s, the wealthiest people, their assets have gone up, up, up. Whereas people in the middle class, their assets have gone down, down, down. So we've gotten a huge split now where a huge portion, I would say the majority, a large portion of what used to be owned by the middle class is now owned by the top echelon of taxpayers. And also in that time period, wages have not gone up in proper proportion to the cost of living or to anything that has happened in that time. So wages need to be increased. This is just critical at this point. It's very critical, and it needs to not be any longer $15 after 5 years. We have to do something now. We have to restore wage equity in the United States where people are properly being paid um, for their work, because we don't want a country where we've got people living in slums, washing their clothes and taking baths out in a public water fountain, which I have seen in Italy. Growing up as a child in southern Italy, when my dad was at a NATO Air Force base, we were there for 5 years. I have seen all kinds of poverty that we have never experienced in the United States, and you do not want to go through that. It's horrible. So we do need to take some action to restore the wage and salary base of the lower income and the middle class in the United States so that we don't have these housing problems.
So, given that, what would you do to encourage new businesses within our area, Brevard County, and um, and the districts that you will represent? How would you encourage new business to come to these areas, um, to staff off the possibility of the things that you describe? Um,
Um, I will say, when we are in Congress, we don't become kings over our district. We still have local government. Local government still has the major role in taking care of these things. Um, so we want to protect our space industry. We want to protect our military complex. And what we have now, we need to enhance and protect it. But as far as encouraging businesses to come to this area, it would not be a congressional activity. And our local community would should be playing better roles in that.
okay, all right. Um, what do you know about HB 1645? That's the bill that DeSantis signed, Governor DeSantis signed on climate change. That you mentions removes removal of the name climate change from
Many
state statutes,
statutes.
in many statutes. What's your plan? What's your thought process on that bill?
That is a Project 2025 activity. That is how he followed Project 2025. And of course it's wrong. So they that is one of the things that is being attacked is science, and climate change, because they think it's a hoax. um, and so that I think it needs to be reversed. We've got ample laws and policies in the state of Florida to protect the state against climate change, because we are ground zero here. A lot of our land is below sea level, and with climate change, we already have a horrible amount of it right now. What happens is icebergs melt, and when icebergs melt, increases the water level. When the water level increases around the world, things get flooded, the coasts get flooded, and Florida has a lot of low-lying areas that are below sea level. So it's just kind of amazing. I think this is why it's very important that our highest officers, the governor and the legislature in Tallahassee, really need to be native Floridians, because we know about this very well. And people who come in from outside of the state, who didn't grow up with all this, who's not as aware, haven't been fully educated in the effect of climate change on the state of Florida. This to me is very important. We should never again have a governor who's not a native Floridian, not a fully avowed environmentalist. So those are basically my thoughts on it.
Okay, all right. You mentioned in one of your previous answers the need to protect the space industry. So I need some specifics from you, as far as how you would continue to support this industry's growth within Brevard County, and what do
No,
you?
it's not one of my major issues to think about how can I support them, but it's the kind of thing where if you are in office, you're committed. I would be committed to do this
Okay.
because this is our district. I'm not running in an imaginary district, and I'm not running to try to change the world. Some change, yes, make some change that makes sense. Like we were just talking about paying down the debt, how we're going to do it, and about immigration, how we're going to resolve the border crisis. But no, I'm not stepping in to try to change everything. So I think it's a matter of when there's an opportunity that comes up or an issue that comes up, you remain open to it and you find out what your community needs and vote accordingly.
All right. Uh, we've been the state has been grappling with property insurance issues for the last couple of years. Homeowners are really, um, you know, feeling the pain. If you so,
Yes.
if I could put it that way, bluntly, I know it's a state issue, for one, but what can you do, or what do you think you can do within your
Okay.
own office to help with this situation?
Okay, so it is a difficult issue. I think we're in the beginning of it, and I think some things are going to start to come together to resolve it. One of the things we really need to do is put a limit on the amount of mortgage that a lender could require a homeowner to have insured. So basically, the reason why people are sitting ducks when they have a mortgage on their property, they must carry insurance because it's required by the lender. And so that makes it very, very easy for property insurers to recognize, well, they've got a captive audience, they have a captive market that absolutely must have their product. So we need to put a limit on that and say, okay, well, now you can't make the people carry that. Maybe the lender will have to carry it themselves. That's one thing. Um, and I'm going to say this without knowing that it is specifically the issue, but one thing I've been thinking about lately is excess profits, because there's been a lot of discussion about, well, is it really inflation if there are not any increased costs and all that's happening is that segment of the market, their profits are just going through the roof. And so I don't know if that's happening with property insurance. It's what Congress should investigate to find out if it is happening. That's what those congressional hearings are for. Um, so that would be what I would say we should look into, and without trying to accuse anybody, because I'm not, I don't set out to attack someone, especially without having the information that really is the problem. I know it is the problem in other sectors. Um, so those are a couple of ideas. We may want to try rate control per, because you can, they have discussed the fact that in Florida, the homes are much smaller and the taxes, the rate is much higher on these smaller homes, whereas out west, the rate is much lower, a much larger home, and then a fire, it's still a huge cost to rebuild them, but there's an inequity in the rates that are being charged people in Florida specifically.
Okay, we have an audience question. Mr. Ron McLean asks, "Good evening. If you're currently in Congress, would you join the growing calls for transparency in the Venezuela elections?"
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what's going on in Venezuela is very important to our national interests. Um, this country is very close to us and has a lot of oil. And frankly, the situation that caused Venezuela to lose its democracy happened at this point a long time ago. And it should have been resolved a long time ago. And the fact that it hasn't been resolved, or that they're just not letting go of power, is a problem. And the fact if we I mean, a lot of people seem to suspect that it was not a free election. And so they do need to open up and let some election monitoring take place. If it didn't take place already, the results need to be investigated. I think this is very important. Um, I think generally, for our national interest, we need to be in greater dialogue with Venezuela, with Maduro or whoever ends up in power, um, and push them to. I know they have a constitution right now, but I'm just not sure. It seems like with more than half of their country outside the country, or however much it is. A lot of people have left Venezuela, and it doesn't seem that what they're doing there is right. So it seems like they need some nudging so that we can once again have renewed trade with Venezuela. We do need to do that. I think it would be in our nation's interest to have renewed trade with Venezuela. It would be in Venezuela's best interest also.
Got you. Thanks for your answer to this audience. Let's keep going. Let's talk about education, Miss Kennedy. Um, Florida's losing a lot of teachers, right?
Yes.
And the average teacher's salary in our state is less than the minimum wage of $58,970, with the national average being around $69,544 based on my research. Creating a better environment to retain teachers is crucial. What specific steps would you take to combat the teacher shortage and ensure schools are well funded?
Okay. Well, once again, this is a state issue and it's on Ron DeSantis and his legislature.
But is there anything you can do on your end to help encourage or nudge or
Well, the first thing I would do is protect the very existence of the Department of Education. So Republican politicians they want to destroy the Department of Education. I think this is another Project 2025 issue that they just think this should be eliminated. I think their focus is, we need to cut the budget because the debt's too high. So therefore, let's just start eliminating agencies, and we'll start with that one because states should be taking care of it on their own. Well, very clearly, they're not taking care of it on their own. So, as far as specific policies, I'm not sure if there's an opportunity that I would have to, increase teachers' pay. I would definitely try to do it. But it's really a state issue because it comes out of the state budget. I'm not going to have any
I
control over
understand.
that state budget.
I understand that. I understand that. Okay, let's talk about LGBTQ rights. Uh, that's part of your platform based on
Yes.
my research. What specific measures will you take to ensure that these rights are upheld in our state as well in our country?
Okay. Well, I think we need federal legislation to protect LGBTQ rights. In fact, it's really everybody. We need everybody in the country to feel that they are free, that they have rights, that they can be themselves, they can love who they want to love, they can get married and have stability in their lives, have insurance, have health insurance. Um, so, one of the things we need to do is enact the Equality Act. This would address the equality of LGBTQ persons. It's very important. Other people in society, we had to fight to protect their rights. We still have more that needs to be done for women. It's incredible that after all these decades, we're still waiting for women to have equal rights. And we need to do it for LGBTQ persons also. It's nobody's business who someone's sleeping with. Um, the fact that they buy a house or they have access, they should have access to credit, um, education, jury service, federal programs, no discrimination in housing, just a lot of things that we need to protect. Um, we we also need to make sure expand mental health care, mental health. Right now, the United States has not been treating mental health as a health issue. They just act like, well, if you're crazy, put you away, and that's all there is to it. But that's really not what it is. And so there are mental health issues involved with being LGBTQ. I think the pressure of it could be one of those things. Suicide prevention is very important. Banning conversion therapy is very important. This is something because some people believe, that it's just wrong and that you should be converted to stop doing that, that it's a voluntary activity. But it's not that way. It's an innate, inborn thing that people are the way they are. It's been going on for thousands of years. And if you look back through history, you can see communities where there were gay people. And other countries are dealing with this better than we are, as far as accepting that there are different kinds of genders that are not all just white or black, male or female. There's a huge range of people that, and we just need to acknowledge those people in the United States fully, fairly, and freely so that everybody is free.
All right. All right. I appreciate your response. Let's talk about gun violence in America. Um, we have, over the years, several mass shootings at schools. And let me hear your stance on, do you believe in gun ownership at home? And how, where does your philosophy stands on the whole gun issue?
Okay. So for me, it's not a philosophy, it's the law, because I'm a lawyer and I believe in upholding constitutional rights. And that just is what it is. If the law is the law. So the Second Amendment gives people the right to bear arms. Um, and as to what it means, it does not mean exactly what extreme right politicians or people have been pushing these days, because we always regulate all of our constitutional rights. Freedom of speech, you do not have the right to make a threat, to say, to yell fire in a crowded theater, to use hate language, to harass someone, there's so many things in speech that you are not allowed to do. And the words are very similar in the Constitution. One doesn't mean stronger than the other. So I believe that we need to extend the mandatory instant criminal background checks in the United States. Right now, 80% of sales are already subject to it, and we need to close the gaps so that the other 20% are protected. We need to raise the age for ownership of automatic and semi-automatic weapons, or whatever it is that is allowed. The age needs to be raised, because the one thing that we've learned lately is that it's the youth. A lot of gun violence is occurring with youth. I believe they're too immature to have that kind of weapon. Um, so there's also legislation pending, or proposed, to require guns to be stored safely in homes, so that a young person could not just go and get the gun. Um, just a lot of things that we need to do for gun safety, protecting against domestic violence. We need red flag laws. When a person has already been tagged for domestic violence, their right to own a gun needs to stop, because now they have violated someone else's right to life and liberty and safety. And the United States Constitution requires Congress and the Senate to protect those also. So these rights are opposed to each other. You don't have an unlimited right to guns.
Gotcha. All right, let's take another question from the audience. Let's see, Miss Kennedy, what's your thoughts on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and how would you actively pursue a knee
Reinstating it
yeah,
in its entirety.
yeah, and then he did a follow up. Basically, would you work to reverse Shelby versus Holder?
I am in favor of expanding our voting rights. I mean, honestly, when I put my platform together, I would be in favor of it's not the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They've changed the name of it now. There's a new formulation of it that I would support. However, I have also just thought myself of the things that I think we need. And I would be in support of anything that gets us uniform election laws, that stops gerrymandering, that stops voter suppression. We really need to stop voter suppression. One day it's this group of people, but the next day it's you. So we need to, across the board, make sure that everybody's right to vote is secure and is not being lessened, that we have uniform laws, for example, on mail ballots, what's allowed here and there. They should be uniform. We need to have some kind of procedure to find out where is a person voting. Is it in this state or that state, and prevent duplicative voting? It really should be a federalized thing, because the voting for Congress, the Senate, and the presidency is a federal issue. And so there's other voting caught up in that, but we can't let this go without standardizing it and protecting the right to vote. Um, so as far as specifically those questions, I know there's a new iteration of the John Lewis Voting Act that that needs to be enacted, that already solves the problem. And there's a lot of other things that we can do that we need to fit in, because a lot of the problems have just been arising lately, or at least they've really manifested themselves in new ways in the last few years since the last election.
I have about three more questions to run through, so we're gonna do a lightning round. See, let's see how fast we can answer these.
Oh boy. So this favors people who don't have any thoughts in their head.
Let's go. The influence of big money in elections has been a growing concern. What specific reforms do you advocate for to ensure fair elections and reduce the impact of large financial contributions?
Well, we need public campaign financing, and we need new fair campaign financing laws to stop the influence of public money, of big money, big interests. It really needs to be more one person, one vote, not one person with tons of money having the power to control the entire United States. And that is where we are right now. It's really gotten bad, and it's really funny. I want to say this because Republican politicians are putting out some theme of Democrats being elites. But the funny thing is that the Republicans are the ones getting all the giant PAC money, all the big money, and cutting the taxes of the wealthy in order to get those campaign dollars down the road. And so it's really the other way. It's not even the pot calling the kettle black. It's pointing at us when really it's them. Um, so there's a lot of things that we need to do to work on that. But it starts with campaign finance and new finance laws,
Okay,
campaign finance laws.
let's get to the next question. Immigration. It's a hot button issue, especially in Florida. You have seen what has happened over the past several months with Ron DeSantis and how he has handled the situation. So let's hear your thoughts on that. How do you plan to balance border security in a humane approach to immigrant? And what are your thoughts on the recent state actions, as I just mentioned, and flying immigrants to other states?
Okay, so I'll start with the short answer first, which is the action of Florida and Texas working together, reaching an agreement to together transport immigrants to other states in the United States. This is illegal. It's actually against the Constitution. The Constitution does not allow two states to make an agreement with each other unless it is approved by Congress, I guess. I mean, they cannot just unilaterally do this. So that was a wrong action. I'm opposed to that. I would never have done that. Um, but my platform is, as I was mentioning, we need to move the processing out of the country. That's one thing that's going to help protect the border. Um, the rest of my policy is we need a prompt path to citizenship for dreamers. They were children. They couldn't possibly have criminal intent, but people keep talking about how, oh, they're just so criminal that you should never allow them citizenship. They were children. We don't criminalize children's minds. They cannot form criminal intent as children. We should also have a prompt path to citizenship for long-term residents who are not a threat to national security. If they are, that's different. But if they've been here a long time and they've been satisfactorily working or whatever, they're just not causing problems. I don't know why we would not just go ahead and grant their citizenship, work through it. They're already here. It's going to be a trauma to get rid of them. We should also allow as many of them as we can the right to work, at least on a temporary basis, because we need um, the farm work in Florida and we also need the construction work. So there are things that they can do right now. That in the past few years, the construction industry has been hurting. There has been a shortage of people. And this would not hurt people in the United States, it would actually help us. And it would also keep them from needing public support. So I think that would be a very good thing. We need to increase the number of judges that we have because we have a backlog of 3 million applications. It's just too much. We need to catch up. And we need to have new quotas, new categories, update everything. It's just been a very long time since our immigration laws have been updated. Um, we need to assure that everyone is treated according to human rights standards and that their dignity, rights, and their health and their safety are protected. We need to keep families together. We need to end unnecessarily harsh and oppressive laws and regulations, such as the requirement that you leave the country for 10 years before you can come back and apply, or that if you leave while your application is pending, then you have to stay out for 10 years. To me, that's just gratuitously
Mhm.
brutal and harsh. It's just unnecessary. We should never have laws like that in the United States. The world looks to us to be the best, and we should not have any laws like that.
All right. Let's see if you can summarize your response to this for me really fast. This is my
Okay.
last question to you.
Okay.
What do you think about foreign aid to other countries, especially in places like Ukraine, where right now the ongoing war is happening with Russia? Do you believe that this is a thing that we should continue? Um, I mean, taking into account that you have all these domestic problems at home. Um, so keep that in
Yeah.
the back of your head when you're answering that question. For me, my pet peeve is I'm a veteran and I see my
Yes.
veterans, my
So you
fellow
just froze up. Are you
veterans.
still there?
Yeah, I see my fellow veterans on the street every day, and they're not properly home. They're not, they're going through issues, and then I see all this money going overseas, and I have a lot of questions about that. So, go ahead. What's your response to that?
Okay, I don't think that we should mix issues and say, oh, well, we can't send money, we shouldn't send money for foreign aid because we have this problem. We need to keep the issues separately. That is not proper logic in deciding issues, deciding what to do. It's not that way. We don't say, okay, I'm going to cut off the Department of Education. Okay, I'm going to cut off any concern about what Russia does. And we're just going to let Russia become a central authoritarian figure and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we'll deal with it 10 years from now when it's a giant, horrible problem. We need to keep them separate. We need to help Ukraine because what I wish is that we had engaged in enough diplomacy before this went down this path to stop it from going down the path to begin with. Because the problem is that once Putin has gone down the path, he now becomes committed to it and he doesn't want to be embarrassed or reverse himself. I believe we need to offer him an out, say, protect your legacy by doing something very special for Russia and for the rest of the world, which is allow free elections, a new constitution, step down, and that would change his legacy tremendously because no dictator that has done horrible things has ever had a good place in history, ever. But this would just saying, okay, we're going to back down, we're going to back off, we're going to find a way to negotiate an end to this and let him build his legacy in another way so that he can save face. This is what I would like to see. But if they need more support, more military support, we need to give it because I believe in protecting NATO. NATO is there to protect us, and we are there to protect them. and Ukraine is right there. In fact, Ukraine would be in NATO right now if this war were over. But the point is not to attack Russia. The point is just security and to calm everybody down.
Okay.
So I do think we need to engage in foreign aid. Any responsible politician would do this. And I think that saying, I'm going to hold off, I'm not going to do something that we desperately need to do for our own national security until you all give me a budget concession, that's wrong. It's just
Okay.
wrong behavior.
All right. Thanks for your response. We're running up on the other show that starts at 8
Okay.
o'clock. So I'm going to give you a minute or two here. Give me a closing remark. Tell the voters why they should vote for you, and ensure that you give them your point of contact, your information as to how they can reach out to you if they have additional questions that they want you to follow up on. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'll start with that last part first. You can reach me, go to my website at sandykennedyforcongress.com, and you can donate there to my campaign to support me. You can also, there's an area where you can apply to volunteer, but you can use that space to ask any question and give your information, and I'll get back to you with any question that you may have. And so, what I would like to say to the people of District 8 as to why they should elect me is that this is my wheelhouse. As an attorney, it is one of the things that we do, which is be in higher office. And I've got the skills to participate in a congressional hearing, to write legislation, not just sit back and vote on it, which is what Bill Posey did for so long. I can actually participate in saying, hey, we need to do this. And I have the persuasive skills as well. Public speaking, I've been speaking in front of judges for 30 years and taking depositions in front of hundreds of people at the same time, or let's say closer to 100, not hundreds. So this is exactly just a continuation of what I've already been doing, but my boss would be the people, um, and I would be dedicated to doing things for the people of this district. I'm not here to do something for a different district, say, oh, well, that district needs this. And so I'm going to come here, run for office, and get Florida to do it. No, that's not me. That is some of my opponents. Um, so I have the qualifications and I have the commitment to help the people. And it's the people and our space industry and our military complex as well.
Ms. Kennedy, I want to thank you for joining me tonight, for sharing your perspectives on what should take place in District 8. And want to wish you the best as you go to the polls. Everyone, remember August 20th is the date that we go to the polls, and her opponent is Mr. McDowell. And Mr. McDowell chose not to come on my platform for whatever reason. An invitation was sent to him. Ms. Kennedy did accept the invitation, and she's here. She gave her views. And so, Ms. Kennedy, thanks again. Wish you the best of luck. And I'm gonna have to hop off to go to the other uh, set of questions that I have prepared for my other candidates. So,
Okay, thank you so much.
best wishes to you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks a lot, Kevin. I really appreciate this opportunity and great questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Very nice show.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.